Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. My name is Eric Vogel. I'm a real estate investor, mastermind coach, husband to an amazing woman, and often my co-host, Tiffany, and father to two incredible boys. I'm on a mission to help you become a real estate investor and not only achieve seven-figure success like my wife and I did, but to do so with intention, direction, and clarity. If you want to transform your financial and personal goals, become the version of yourself you've always wanted, and reach your dream life ASAP, then you're in the right place. Thank you for deciding to hit that play button today. Now let's begin.
Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast. Today we're here with Michelle LaBrosse, and we're going to be interviewing her about project management. Please welcome Michelle. She's an accomplished author, CEO of Cheetah Learning, and an inspiring figure in project management. She has a dynamic background in aerospace engineering and a rich career as an Air Force officer. She brings a unique perspective to the realm of leadership and innovation, and her remarkable achievements include recognition as one of the 25 most influential women in project management globally by the Project Management Institute. Her mission is enabling exceptional outcomes through accessible and enjoyable project management education. Welcome, Michelle. We're so excited to have you today.
Well, thanks, Tiffany. And I am really excited to talk to your real estate investors because I have a lot to say to them.
Good. Great. We are so excited to hear it. So you work with project management. Can you give just an overview of what the heck is project management?
So anytime you have a unique endeavor, a unique goal, it's a project. So you might not have a lot of experience doing it. You might not have a lot of experience managing the people that are doing it. It's something that has a very unique beginning and an end. And that pretty much describes so much of what we do as real estate. When you're a real estate investor, you get this real estate property. You might need to hire new subcontractors to do something for the renovation that you haven't done before. This is new to you. Now, if you do it repeatedly, then you want to create a process. And I used to be into process management. And I realized that process management had a lot of talent to going for teaching it, but not as much in project management, because it's much harder to teach project management. It's a much harder skill, and there's many more opportunities to get it right. There's 75% of all projects fail to meet their intended objectives. And there's the amount of productivity losses because of bad project management is in the billions. I mean, this is like an opportunity that if you can get a little bit better with your projects, you can see a better return on your real estate investments.
Absolutely. Yeah, we all know every project within flips or renovating a property seems to go long on budget and time. So what are some good tips that people can use to try to stay on task and on time?
Okay, because I call it the never-ending nightmare. Well, you have every contractor you meet tells you, well, this will take 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Like I had these sheetrockers. Oh, it'll take us 2 weeks to sheetrock your 4,000 square foot building. And I'm looking at them like, you guys might have maybe a third of the sheetrock up in 2 weeks, right? And unless you have a crew that's there, right? But you two guys alone are not going to finish sheetrocking a 4,000 square foot building in 2 weeks. So part of it is having a really realistic idea of what's possible, okay? So my big thing is to finish projects in 2 weeks. That's what Cheetah Agile Project is about. This book I wrote in 2021. I've written 5 project management books. But in 2021, it was COVID and I was teaching online and I was like, you know what? I am going to write a project management book in 2 weeks. And it's going to be about how do you finish projects in 2 weeks? Because I am really well known for finishing my projects in 2 weeks. So that's what I did. And I have done a lot of real estate projects. I bought and sold quite a bit of different properties. And I use my 2 week rule, but I don't believe when somebody tells me they're going to be done in 2 weeks. Okay. That's like the first thing is I look into what is involved in this project. What's your experience level? Mm-hmm. What type of tools do you have? How many people are on your crew before I believe them? So I just had this property, a virtual training center for my company. And I had this painter and he was the worst at scheduling his time. And he always told me he would be done in 2 weeks. And I looked at him, I said, you are getting 4 window trims done a day. I don't know, with a house with 15 window trims, and then you still have to paint all the doors, how you even, and you keep going to somebody else's job. right?
Goodness.
And then coming and giving me like 2 hours of your time, how you think you're going to be done in 2 weeks. So I went and found a crew of 4 painters who right now are working on the virtual training center. And actually, we will be done in 3 days.
Yeah, that's great.
So the 2-week thing is my rule, but I don't believe when other people tell me they're going to be done in 2 weeks.
Fair. We learned very fast that sometimes doing the labor ourselves or using that one-man crew costs more in the long run because of the time it takes. And those holding costs stack up so quick.
Right. So my other thing about my 2-week rule, it's not a 2-week rule, it's not the contractor's 2-week rule, is I chunk out my work so it can be done in 2-week increments, but I know what they can do. And I don't let them go work on other people's jobs.
Great.
So I don't know if the real estate world is rife with these contractors who will chase money. So they ask you for a deposit, which I don't recommend you ever do. Yeah. You get your own deals with the suppliers, right? You have your own contracts with the supply houses and you pay for the material. And you have milestones that they have to meet X, Y, Z, and you pay every Friday, right? So my requirements are you're only working on my job for the next 2 weeks. We all agree what you can get done in 2 weeks. I get to meet your whole crew and talk to them individually about their experience. So I interviewed several different painters for this job. So this guy told me he had a crew of 3 people and that he could get started on my job immediately. I said, well, I'm going to need to meet your other people. They came up and I said, so what's your painting experience? And one guy said, I worked for my uncle a couple of years ago in high school. And the other guy said, I don't have any experience. I said, oh, next. All right, because don't just interview the contractor. Interview who works for the contractor.
That's so true.
Too.
Yeah.
Because you'll also get an idea as how long have you been working for this contractor? If they haven't been working for the contractor for very long, then that contractor doesn't have good relationships.
Yeah, it's really
right.
True.
So that tells you a lot. So, my first rule is to start right. Right. By starting right is everybody agrees with what done is. So like with my sheetrock, what is done for the 2 weeks is we have all of the sheetrock installed. Okay. I had this project up in Alaska where these guys just put the sheetrock in, but they didn't put the sheetrock in a tiny little bathroom. Like, how are we supposed to get a 4x8 piece of sheetrock in this bathroom after you've already framed it up? Right? So that is my rule for the 2 weeks of the sheetrock for the 4,000 square foot building is we had every single piece of sheetrock installed in the house before we started to mud and tape.
That's great.
Right. So basically, I know, so starting right, we all agreed what done was. Now, I have a couple other rules. I commit based on capabilities, right? Which is like, I call it reality-based project management. Now, if you are doing some of the real estate renovation work yourself and you're relying on watching YouTube videos to do the work, okay? Which, you know what? I'm going to admit, why do I know about this? Because I've done it.
You're calling Eric out right now. Like that is how we got our start was watching YouTube videos. It worked, but it is not the best way.
Right. So I had a problem with this training center that I'm working on is we have a couple bathrooms in the training center and we were tiling them and I had a problem getting tilers in here. And so I was watching YouTube videos. I tiled bathrooms before. It's not my favorite thing to do. Plus, it's not the best use of my time.
Right.
Right. So I was watching YouTube videos because a lot has changed in the tiling world since I tiled my first bathroom like 30 years ago. And I bought my Schluter board and I bought all the equipment to tile the bathroom. And I'm looking at this project. I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this about as much as I want to have a root canal. And so my cousin, he was a mason. He goes, I'll come up and help you tile. Right. So I'm like, I had second thoughts about working with this cousin. I had some experiences with him 12 years ago. He had a little bit of a drinking problem. And he goes, well, I haven't drank in 5 years. I'm like, maybe I'll give you another chance. And so I said, okay, how about you come up? And so, I don't know what triggered him. He went to the bar the night before he was coming up, got beat up at the bar, shows up, really damaged, 2 days into my tiling project. And he's supposed to spend a whole week on it. He goes, my boss just called me. I got to go work on another concrete project. I'm like, you know what? Don't come back. I'll find somebody else. But oh my God, these things can be a nightmare. So I'm still,
Yeah.
and I was watching the YouTube videos, but I said, you know what? I will get a new tiling person. And sure enough, I did. And luckily it's raining this week and the tiling person is downstairs finishing the bathroom because he didn't want to work outside. So
Yeah.
sometimes you got to work with the opportunity. So that's what it's like, leveraging all of your sources of capital, right? So we don't just have money, we have relationships, we have infrastructure, we have capabilities that we can use to get this work done and be creative about it, right? So, sometimes like when you're in a resource constrained environment, like you just don't have the talent available. So you're going to have to be creative. So how I found the new tile person is I went to the hardware store where I had ordered a lot of my supplies. And I said, I'm having a problem getting a good tiling person. And so he gave me this name of this company, Halden. And he comes by to visit and he said, oh, yeah, I talked to Scott at the hardware store. And he said, he said you were pretty good to work with, which was fantastic. Right.
Absolutely.
So then the contractor knew I was good to work with. I knew he was good to work with because the hardware store recommended him. And we went back and forth. He sent me a contract. He sent me his insurance. He got an insurance writer at a little tile job. I thought that was great. And then he goes, if it's raining out next week, I can work a lot on your project. I'm like, that's awesome. But I recognized what his constraints were. And it's not like I already got the certificate of occupancy. This job isn't that critical on the tile. It's not like managing the sheetrockers.
Yeah.
So, leveraging your sources of capital, which is one of them is your reputation, right?
Absolutely.
It's your reputation. So I had a good reputation with the hardware store. So he basically vouched for me. He vouched for the guy doing the tiling as well, right? The new and so it didn't require any money up front and much easier to work with. So that's part of it is your reputation, your existing infrastructure, your knowledge and skills. I mean, like we can all watch YouTube videos, but you really want to be doing that?
Yeah. Well, it's not scalable. You might not have tons of cash especially when you first get started. So it's easy to go that route. But what you don't realize is it takes longer. We had projects that could have been done in 6 weeks that we were taking 3 months to do because we were doing it ourselves. And if we could have paid less in holding costs and gotten that property rented faster, in the end, we would have been less stressed and we would have had it, cash flow better. But, it's the lesson you have to learn along the way. And it's interesting because cash is something that is more finite. So we go to leverage our time, but that's not always the best route. Sometimes it is using your reputation or other people in your network to get to the point where you need to in your project.
And, it's interesting about the cash flow thing, right? Because once you get into this, you really start to generate some great cash flow. But, you can have times where you have slower cash flow. And you have to manage your contractors differently with that during that time, but you can still manage them. It just doesn't mean that, you're going to have to get more creative about how you're generating cash flow. And, absolutely. I don't like to finance things if I don't have to, but I will take out short-term bridge loans at a higher interest rate if I need to, and then just pay them back quickly. So you got to look into that. You can't just say, oh, I'm never going to do that. Or, I don't like to tie myself up into 30-year things and, prepayment penalties out just isn't smart. But once you start right, there's another thing I do is working right. Now, I was just reading Jimmy Buffett's obituary, right? Because Jimmy Buffett just passed away. I guess I'm putting a timestamp on this podcast.
Yes.
One of the things is one of his advisors was Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett told him to stay in the game, okay, which is really an interesting concept. Stay in the management game. Don't give up the management of your core money-making thing to other people. Now, you can delegate and stuff like that. So I've always been very involved in the management, day-to-day management of my projects. And so every morning, and this is part of the thing I do with the Cheetah Agile projects, is I have a little meeting. And in Agile, it's called the daily stand-up. And I don't use any terms like that. But I have a little meeting with everybody working on my project. And I have a little task list that's prioritized and explains to them the dependencies. Okay, now you were talking about a Gantt chart before we started, and a Gantt chart talks about your dependencies. So I just do this with a Google sheet, and I have everybody who's there linked, who's going to be working on my site. We go over that every morning, and they talk about it. So like this morning, my contractors are working on the window trim, and they're finishing the window trim because these shades are all getting installed on Wednesday. So we need the window trim done first, right? And then I have this Finnish guy, and I had him working on finishing up some stuff on that tile project because the tiler is going to come when he's rained out of something.
Yeah.
And the window guys, we're all getting everything set up so that tile guy can just easily slide in there. But they all understand the dependencies. And so I break it out by each person's roles. And it takes me about 15 minutes the night before to create it. Right. But they like it. And they've told me time and time again, we really like working with you because we like this morning priority list that you set for us. So setting your priorities is so important, and staying in the game. Do not outsource that to somebody else. You're the owner, you're the manager, you take it on because you're going to get a much better outcome. So that's part of working right and focusing and finishing. I am right here on the job site. I will get a camper and I will live on the job site. I don't know if you've done that.
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
We spent about 6 months in a camper when we first got married and parked out back of a job site. It was great because when, you had to do something at the last minute the night before an inspection, we could work till 11 o'clock and then crash.
You're there. You're on site, and you know what? Everybody knows you're involved.
Absolutely.
Right. And they also know that they can't take shortcuts because you're looking over that job site every single day. Using core strengths. I mean, I've been in business for 30 years. And one of the things that's helped me is I'm really good at finding out what people's core strengths are and using them. And, I have found time and time again, when people aren't performing, it's because you're asking them to do something that's an unnatural act for them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense to get mad at them because they're just not good at that. Right.
Yeah.
And so why make a poodle be a beagle, right?
Right. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And so, hopefully the contractors are good at hiring people with their core strengths. But if they're not, you have to jump in. You have to be the manager. And I also do daily alignment. So one of the reasons I have a little assessment of how your habits can create project delays, right? And one of the things that creates project delays is changing your mind on requirements. That's why I like the 2-week rule. Do not change your mind for 2 weeks, right? Keep current with what you're doing for 2 weeks and finish that, okay? Then at the end of 2 weeks, and then if you haven't come up with a new idea, you put it in what's called a backlog, okay? That's the backlog that we can get to that later. We're going to do that after we finish this for 2 weeks. Like, one of my things is I'm going to be putting in these gas fireplaces in the training center. And I'm doing it as a secondary heat source because I was talked into putting in heat pumps. Heat pumps is a big thing where we're building this. And I'm a little concerned that in the winter that we may need a secondary heat source.
Right.
But I'm not working on the gas fireplaces I got to finish this 2 weeks. I can't even think about the gas fireplaces until we're finished this phase. And, they're not actually, we don't need them. We're not going to need them till January. So why would I waste my time working on that? So daily alignment, right? Daily alignment with you as the leader, not changing your mind.
That's great.
That is one of the biggest things that creates problems.
Yeah. And so you said it takes you about 15 minutes to prepare your daily meeting information. How much time do you think that saves you, though, over the course of a 2-week sprint? Well, it saves me a ton of time with working with the contractors during the day because they're not constantly asking me, what do I need them to do next? Yes.
They're able to take more autonomy with their work. So it saves me a lot of time. It frees me up to work on other projects.
That's great. That's a good point.
Right?
I know Eric spends a lot of time on the phone answering just random questions from the contractor, and it's stuff he needs to be able to move forward. But if we could take that 15, 20 minutes in the morning, and then he has his whole day to not have his phone blowing up from different people calling, that's a great tip. Yeah. Well, the other thing is make sure that everybody agrees on communication. Okay. Because there's nothing more frustrating when you're trying to get in touch with one of the main people and they don't answer their phone. Yeah. Right? It slows everything down. And so my rule, and I've had this rule, we're cheetahs, we respond fast, is anytime somebody gets in touch with anybody associated with my business, they get recalled back within 15 minutes. Because that communication is extremely timely. And so I just let a contractor go about a month ago who was not responding. And everybody, he wasn't responding to me, wasn't responding to any of his workers. And so everybody would get hung up. And this guy was also reassigning people to all different types of projects. So nobody ever knew where they were supposed to be. They were so frustrated. I'm like, I can't work like this. Yeah. You're not. So I'm going to go find somebody else that's more effective.
And I'm so sorry, I like you and everything, but I can't work like this. So,
Right.
the ending the project right too, ending that 2-week phase right is so important. Now, I am big on celebrating, right?
I don't think people do it enough. I know we don't. You just move on
Yeah.
to the next
So,
part.
I mean, like I've had this plumber working on my finished plumbing, and we got our temp CO last week, right? My finished guy, my plumber, I made them lobsters and steamers. They were so excited, right? We finished, right? We finished them, and we got the temp CO. We're starting our next thing this week is painting the trim and getting the trim finished and getting ready for actually everything to be moving in here. So we celebrated. Do you know how many people want to work on my project because she makes you lobsters and steamers?
Yeah.
Yeah. We celebrated, and that is ending right is so important. Put a bow on it. Yay!
Yeah.
Look what we did, guys. This is so amazing. And showing appreciation is really important. Obviously, you've got to pay them, right? I mean, I'm really big into paying people, but you just let them know, like, I value your time and appreciate that you worked on my project. Thank you so much.
That's great.
And so ending right is so important. So those are the three things: is starting right, working right, and ending right. And it's all about how are you dealing with these people. They're people, they're human beings. It's funny. I think that contractors and guys that work on real estate, they're very emotional. The more and not, and I don't want to throw them under the bus, but they're not that emotionally intelligent, right? And so, a lot of times if you've done any type of introspective work, you can have what's called equanimity. You don't get rattled by things, but they get rattled by things, and they take their work. They have a lot of pride in their work.
They do, very much
right.
So.
And so you have to be very careful with how you're giving feedback and advice, and make sure that you're pointing out what they've done well and what you want a little bit different. Because I think there's nothing more demoralizing to somebody trying to do the best job when the person comes in and just starts yelling at them for whatever they did, and they just, put their heart and soul into something that they did. You can't be like that.
Right. It's interesting because I feel like as a real estate investor, the bar is so low for treating them well. Like doing something small, like showing up to a meeting with donuts would mean a lot to them. And it took, running by Dunkin' Donuts, which you were probably going to do anyways, and grab a coffee. And, it's just such a low cost way to get your reputation, like you talked about, and to build some goodwill with the team. So they are willing to hit your deadline on time. They might work a little longer to hit that 2-week timeline because they know you're going to take care of them, and they want you to succeed.
Yeah, they want to work for you. I had this guy that worked for me for 25 years, and he helped manage most of my projects because he liked working with me. I mean, he could have gone and done any number of other jobs, but he liked working with me. Yeah. And, sometimes when you have those long-term relationships, when things are rough, they'll ride the wave with you because you compensate them when things are going well.
Absolutely.
Right. And, you can't look at wringing out every last penny in every single situation.
Absolutely.
And, I also want to talk about bad decisions. Okay. Sometimes you just make a bad decision. Okay. Right. Like, so somebody that was going to be at the training center wanted a special steam shower. All right. I didn't like that idea, but you know what? This person is really important to the company. I said, all right, we will get you your steam shower. It costs like $2,700. Okay. So the builders did not frame it up correctly. All right. To fix it, to get the steam shower to work would have cost like another $3,000 to fix all the framing. And I'm like, do you really want the steam shower? Because it wasn't just the reframing. It was going to delay it like another 2 weeks because we had finished that part of the job, and it was going to mean sheetrock and everything else. And when we established it, it wasn't going to work. We established it wasn't going to work when we went and set up the steam shower, and we couldn't get it in there. I called the steam shower company, and they're like, you're not supposed to have a wall there. It's supposed to be open. I'm like, oh my God, really? So that's when we decided to tile the shower now. The whole tile thing that went on, right? And I'm like, okay, that was a bad decision, right? There was many bad decisions that just went along with that, not understanding how that steam shower went together, putting the wall there.
Yeah.
And, I'm just going to let it go. I gave the steam shower to the contractor who was in charge at the time. I said, have enjoy your steam shower.
That's great. But you made a decision and you accepted it, and then you made another decision to move on. And so often we get caught up in what is the right decision, and it doesn't always matter. You just have to make a decision. And you made a quick decision and moved on.
And you know what? I lost 27. Who cares? Who cares?
Right.
You know, I mean, if you're willing to accept, I say 10% losses on your project, you can keep things moving much faster.
Absolutely.
You know, you're going to accept 10% losses to get it finished on time. You're going to gain so much more money once you're finished.
Absolutely.
Right. So accept your bad decisions, accept that you might have some losses. You might have done some stupid things. That's okay.
Yep.
That's called learning. Right.
Yeah. You can't win them all.
You can't
and
win them all.
If you get a lesson out of it, it's not a waste, because you gained something, you learned something from that situation, and just move on. I think we get so hung up on the past and where we messed up. And if we just accept it, move on, celebrate the wins and the losses, because the losses are a lesson.
And then move on to your next 2 weeks. Okay, I get to do it again.
Well, it's great because you can put up with anything for 2 weeks for most of us and most things. Yeah. I don't know. Sleep deprivation, that went on a lot longer than 2 weeks for us with our latest baby. And I don't know. I wouldn't recommend more than that, but we can all tolerate a lot though in 2 weeks. So if you're looking at a project in a 2 week chunk, it's much more manageable. And you mentioned previously before we started recording that a lot changes. So if you're building out a 3-month scope, you don't know how long it's going to take for that electrician to get you on the calendar. You know, there's so many unknowns. So having that flexibility of only going 2 weeks out, it's great. I love that advice.
Well, you know, another thing is about starting right. Okay. The 2 week thing makes you really get clear on your scope, because what I have found is about frustration, right? Whenever I'm really frustrated, it means I need to dial it back. I need to come up with a smaller goal. That's all right. So, like, you know, this title project was really frustrating. Okay. I'm going to watch YouTube videos. Okay. That's a smaller goal. I can go watch YouTube videos. I can get smart on what's required so that I can be a better consumer of a contractor's services.
Yeah.
Right. So basically, when you're going to get frustrated, you're in real estate. That just goes with the territory.
Absolutely.
Right? So dial it back. You know, I mean, like, I renovated a lot of different properties, and I built it from ground up as well. And I'm always excited when I build from ground up that, I'm here taking a shower and it's flowing down into the septic system. And there was nothing here when I started, right? So there's nothing like that. That's incredible. But renovation, when you have to rip out the entire building, you're doing all this demo. I mean, it's like, oh my God, am I ever going to see my way out of this? And if you break it down and you say, okay, you know what, today we're just going to get all of the subflooring up, or we're going to get all the roofing off, and you break it down, you're going to be first of all, a lot more proud of yourself because, wow, look at what I accomplished. And you're going to be a lot less frustrated. So,
absolutely.
You know, that's one of my other pieces of advice. When you get frustrated, that is an indicator we need to dial back this goal.
Yeah.
You know,
that's great. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
So one bite at a time, right? You got to make it smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you always joke, I'm getting older. And they're like, if you want to be happier as you get older, you have to make your world smaller.
Interesting.
Right. And I think that can go at any age.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to be happier, you got to make your world smaller. And so, you know, you got to take smaller steps. And it's easy. So in this training center that I built, I'm getting older, and I was having a problem with stairs that were too high. I'm short. I'm a short person. So when I make a stair height for someone who's like 5'7", I'm 5'2". I'm like taking giant steps up the stairs. I made stairs that were 5 inches high.
That's great.
I call them senior stairs.
Hey, that's the beauty of building. You can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want. So, I mean, like, I think there's nothing better than real estate for, you know, for your financial security. I'm not a fan of the stock market at all. I think it's a great way to lose a ton of money. I really would rather be making lobster and steamers for the plumber than a financial planner.
Yes. And I think we can all be better real estate investors if we apply principles of project management to the things we're working on, because I know we get shiny object syndrome all the time. And if we stick with a 2-week focus, it would make our current renovation that's been a nightmare go so much better. So I wish we had met you sooner, but I hope for our listeners that are getting started in real estate, check out Michelle's book. I think it'll be great. I mean, I look forward to reading it and learning how we can apply it to all of the work we're doing. And I really look forward to digging into it and really appreciate your time today. Is there anything else you want to mention before we sign off?
Oh, can I talk about the discount for your listeners?
Absolutely. Please do.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we have a course on Cheetah Agile projects because, what's interesting is when you get good at projects, people want to hire you to manage their projects. And, it's funny because Cheetah Agile project managers on LinkedIn, and we did this little thing where we do a certification with Accredible, they can make $120,000 a year.
That's great.
Which is pretty cool. And I always like having monetizable skill sets. I think that's helpful. I call it when you want to do a employee vacation, right? When you get tired of working and you want to go collect a paycheck from somebody. Yeah. It's always good to have these credentials. So we have Cheetah Agile certified, and you can make $120,000 a year as a Cheetah Agile certified project manager. But I have a course for that, which is only 20 hours because we're teaching you how to do things fast. But you do an actual 2-week project during that course. Okay. And that course is typically $44.99, but we're giving your listeners $500 off of the course for $3,999, and it's guaranteed. So after you take the course, you don't think you're really good at 2-week projects, we have to really refund your money. But I'm going to tell you, we've never refunded anybody any money because they're always so successful with it.
That's great. That's like the cheapest college degree you can get right there.
The cheapest college degree. Well, it's quicker.
Absolutely.
It's going to take you a month, and it's probably going to be the most impactful month you've ever spent. And it will actually change your life tremendously. That's what people have told us time and time again about this program.
Awesome.
So I'm so excited that you guys had me on, and I really like your work with helping people with real estate investment because it is the way to go.
We completely agree. It allowed us to find financial freedom very young, and we hope other people will too. And take the advice from Michelle, read the book. If you're interested in the course, go check it out. We'll put the link in the show notes. I wish we had done something like this years ago because so many projects went haywire. And I feel like if we had that 2-week focus, it would have made us a little less crazy. But hey, it's all lessons. And if you're getting started, check out the book because it'll save you so much headaches. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but Eric's getting a lot of gray hair. So that's from our project. So
that's so funny that you say that. Yeah, because I'm 61 and I have almost no gray hair.
Right. Because we're using 2-week projects.
I'm doing 2-week projects, yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for listening. We hope this was helpful, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
We are immensely grateful for you joining us today. If you haven't already done so, we invite you to subscribe to our show. We understand that many of you tune in regularly, but perhaps haven't had the chance to hit that subscribe button yet. Don't worry, it's effortless. It takes about 3 seconds to follow or subscribe on your platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're enjoying the show. Your support is invaluable to us and has played a crucial role in the tremendous growth of our podcast. We sincerely appreciate your assistance in any way, shape, or form. Together, we can launch this podcast to even greater heights.